Welcome.
Welcome, everybody, to this beautiful morning today on Sun's Day. Before we begin, we'd like to call in the energy of the divine masculine, the seeding component of life. Give thanks to the bright light, the tonal, the sun, the upper part of our consciousness that connects us directly to spirit. And we invite it in on this very delicate, beautiful subject we're approaching this morning about life, but better known as death. So we will be covering death today. And we just like to welcome you all in.
Welcome. I'm Dr. Elena Esparza, and this is,
Chrissy Bear.
and we're broadcasting from Just Breathe Healing Center in East Los Angeles, and it's what's the date today?
The 27th.
Of September. And do you want to start out with what's going on in cosmically in the?
It's pretty nice. Let's make sure it is the 27th. It is.
It is.
And nice because that calls in, so 2 plus 7 is 9, and that calls in directly Mars, which is the warrior spirit, both feminine and masculine. And that is the perfect companion to have with you as we journey through the underworld. And this journey through the underworld is not only going to happen in this conversation this morning, but it is happening as the transit that we're embarked on right now. Right now, we have entered the part of the year where the sun is now losing a little of its brightness, and we're entering the time of release where the earth balances out what it needs and what it doesn't in order to discard what it doesn't need so we could be reborn again in the spring. That is happening also within us. That's the aspect that we're on in Libra, where we're weighing our deeds of the year, our deeds of this season, and is this some are we going to move which ones are we going to move forward with, which ones will we release, especially since we're entering a time where our awareness of what's around us, it's harder, when you're in the dark, it's harder to deny that there's many things that are unseen, existing around us. In the bright of day, it's easy to just rely on what's directly in front of you because you could see it all. So we define ourselves by what the ancestors called our tonal. On What the ancestors called our tonal, which is the upper part of our being, which is the mind, which is the part of us that is directly connected to source. Whereas this time of the year is actually connected more to our nawal, which is like our dream body, which is the part of us that is connected to the night, that is connected to the moon, and that is exactly where we're being driven. So
Inwardly.
Inwardly, exactly.
Yeah, as a gardener, we're both earth people, but I am a gardener. I'm one who, is watching the transition of time through the plants around me and, nature. And it's so in sync. Nature is so in sync with these cosmic bodies, pulling energy in all these different directions. And nature is right in sync. The fires burning, the leaves falling from the trees. Uh, I was a little disappointed that my cucumbers are no longer producing, and I'm like, oh, it's the time. It's supposed to do this, and I love, that you're emphasizing that this is the going into the darkness, and I really do believe this is a very important transitional period. And you talked to me about that this morning, right? And you can say more about it in a second, but I really get that that's a transitional period. And if you are finding in your life, I'm finding it in mine, that there are really important transitions happening. I've lost a few family members in just the last 10 days. My mother's oldest brother, our great uncle, my uncle Rudy, just passed away 8 days ago or 9 days ago. And two nights ago, his wife passed with him very shortly after. And, that that transitioning. It's like the timing, though sad, it feels right. They needed to do that. They were both done. They were tired. Um, and I thought at first I was feeling that loss, but I'm also feeling the loss of, that foundation, or that, like you said, the that visual relationship I have with my world, that it's a certain way and I like it that way because it's familiar and I know how to maneuver through it. And I'm feeling really moved by that. That I know that we are coming to an end of that. The world is transitioning. It is a great transition. It is a global transition. And I'm with you that there is a time that we need to go inside because this transition is bigger than ourselves. There is a, a social transition going on. There is a monetary transition going on. There is a familial transition. Lives are being divided by stupid things, politics, viruses, you know, and we're not getting it. We're not seeing that it's all connected, and I'm feeling that loss too. Even you might feel it in your relationships, like there's something between us. And I don't think that it's necessarily bad. I really just think that it's time to go inside and check yourself. We like to check the other person because it's so easy to, like, you. But Chrissy kind of reminded me, it's like, well, check yourself, how are you dealing with this transition? What is your truth in these transitional times? And I think that's why the death is so important. Is like, who are we in these dark moments?
So yes, like there is definitely a big change happening for the collective as a whole. And one thing that the ancestors left with us in their teachings and that helped people deal with loss from the small scale of one's own life to the grand scale of what happens in the universe was a knowing and a daily practice of uniting these two, like what I called the tonal, which is the part of us that's connected to spirit, that is bright and visual, and the nawa, which is our dream body. The whole point of uniting it was that this happens every day.
Yeah.
So knowing that from the transition, there's a place, and they say it happens at around where the liver is right before belly button. There's a place where from night, once you're falling asleep and you're transitioning into living through your dream body, there's a very fine transition right there. That's every day. But we're now going through it also as a collective because the earth is a macrocosm and its own being is now going through these grand changes as well. As we enter that, and with the knowing, I know that gives me comfort is that there's a knowing that the point of life was to unite the two bodies so that we're not in this place where we feel divided by our conscious self and our spiritual self,
Right.
that they walk actually in unison. And that's what the ancestors called the daytime was still walking, was uniting your dream body, but you walked in a dream state even in the daytime. We're still dreaming and weaving these visions, this reality. It doesn't separate and begin only in the night or only in the day. The fact that we're not familiar with that in a day-to-day basis, when it happens on these grand scales, they could feel so heavy. We're not taught to be in tune with the fine transitions of things. From when we go into, we definitely know how summer feels.
Yes.
And we definitely know how spring feels. But that transition between summer and spring, we're not so familiar with. And that's what Day of the Dead was. That's why it started
Yes.
from June to now. So you could feel and be aware of that transition that happens where, so everybody knew before in the ancient days that in your dream state and in the subconscious, you aren't separated by what we call the dead. We're actually in tune and we are able to perceive it, which is why some people feel afraid.
Yes.
The fear usually comes from some scary translation of it, usually from movies or stories, but it's the unknown. And the unknown does exist within transitions of time, including seasons.
Yes.
So we're at a place now where it's going to become undeniable because it is now darker and colder. But that transition is really important to take note of, because that's where we accept and embrace that we aren't actually separated by anything. And when you accept that, then you're able to dive in a little deeper into yourself and see what it is that you're actually perceiving around you, so you could integrate it into this waking life and then move forward within the visions that you have for yourself, because we are also cultivating things that don't serve us, right? Like
Yes.
there's like even in your garden, if you placed a good seed but it was in the wrong position, well, this year you could put
Yeah.
it closer to the sun or
Right.
something.
Right. Yeah. I mean, how many times have I done that? I planted cucumbers under a tree. Not a good idea. Not only did I not get cucumbers, but I didn't get a whole nice plant. I didn't get to eat them. I really think, like, to simplify what you just said, correct me if I didn't get this right, but is like, we I'm going to go back to the garden because it's so simple to me. um, I planted my garden. The things that gave fruit have got given fruit. The things that didn't, I'm pulling out. I'm going to compost them, make new earth, and use it for the next season. I can now reevaluate where I'm going to plant, how I'm going to redo my garden. It's My garden is a mess right now because I did just that, and I can feel that. And I can reassess who I was in it. Was I happy with my work? Or did I not like it? Um, and I really get this idea that you're talking about Day of the Dead. It's not a 1 day event. It's a transition, and I feel that as I'm pulling my garden apart. It's not a 1 day event. I don't have the opportunity to wiggle my nose and boom, my you know wilt, wilting garden and diminished colors are just going to be gone. I have to go and pick them and cut them and chop them and let them sit, and then I take the dirt out, and I have to. It's like this pot process, and we need the process, and we're not patient with that process. We want it to be an instant response. We want to go to sleep and wake up and say, okay, it's spring again. But we that is our problem. Our problem is we don't allow our time to go through these transitions with gentleness, with the process of our daily practice, with um, going through a feeling that you might be feeling. Like, I can rush through my sadness, and it keeps welling up and down as you and I are speaking. And I could push it to the side so I can get through the day, but I'm not allowing the transition to feed me. I'm just blocking it. And then I'm sure if I don't address it, it'll show up maybe inconveniently. And I won't understand why I'm feeling it so strongly. Um, does that make sense?
No, yeah, completely. I mean, that is what calendars and the great arcana show. It's that you have your beginning point, you sense when you're at the bottom of the mountain, and you're making your way to the top of the mountain, and then that's like your pinnacle of experience, right? But there's so many eidolons that get you up there, because every step, every level, it actually holds an experience before you arrive to your destination.
That is so true. And sometimes you see the top of the mountain, you think, doom, it's a straight leg. But you go up a hill, and then you're like, oh, shoot, I got to go back down and go back up and down and go back up. So just getting to the top isn't going to do it either.
Right. Like if you take a lift to the top,
you missed out on the experience, and then you're empty. It's an empty space that you've arrived because you didn't feel it with those steps. You said something too. Well, maybe it'll come back. Um,
One of the, since we marked on death, one of I think the fine points that is missed when addressing that transition is that when I heard that, in fact, like one of the ways that we now interpret our tradition is that we lay before the altar these gifts for our for our dead, for the people who have passed. I learned from someone very wise that instead it wasn't actually exactly that way. These gifts were for us because, in fact, we're the ones who are limited in our perception because we're part of this physical world. We get to dive into the astral at night, but we also live in this physical world, and it's somewhat of a trap, yet also just a containment. Like anything, like a child when it's growing, you don't just give it the world, you contain it a little bit, even a puppy. So in a sense, that's the type of containment I'm speaking of that we're in for our evolution. Yet in that, these gifts are actually a gift so that we could share. It's like an invitation from our ancestors to recognize that world of spirit that we're a part of. The gift is for us to tap back into. Sorry, our computer went a little nuts. Um, to tap back into the fact that we're not separate and that there is this connection day in, day out with the world of spirit. So, again, just that our gifts are actually for us. This is for us to be able to be infinite again, to know that that is our goal, is to be united with the infinite because we live that.
Yeah.
And at times our own actions, I already did that.
Okay.
At times our own actions are actually what keep us a little more finite, a little more stagnant and stuck in the experiences that we've cultivated thus far. But we have to remind ourselves we're not done. There's so much to add to in this life and in your own being, really. Like you're here to discover who you are. So feeling comfortable and knowing everything around you is going to get pushed from time to time, as it should. You're here to grow.
I remember what you said, that kind of like, whoa, yeah, that whole unknown thing, this other side, it, we resist, that. And like you said, we pretend, or not pretend, but we do this gift offering for Day of the Dead.
Mm.
And we've taught, and we're now teaching the world that Day of the Dead is about calling our ancestors back, as if they're not already with us. This is like what you're saying. We are spiritual beings and our ancestors live with us. There's no time between us. There's no past, present, and future. It's only being. And we are not really wrapped around that very well.
Spirit runs in a current, like in the ocean. And we're in this current with those who are not here in the physical as well. So it's like a reminder, like, remember, we're all traveling together. We're all on this boat. And that's the reminder so that we don't feel separate and abandoned by our ancestors.
And in truth, like you said, that day of honoring or calling in is more of us calling our souls back to say, oh, we're part of this. You've always been there, and we're a part of you. I'm just rephrasing it for myself too.
Yeah.
And I really get that. When I'm thinking about my uncle and his wife who died. She's my aunt. And I'm not feeling like I'm separate from them. Mostly I'm feeling that, I think it's like you said, in this transition, just not feeling that I'm connected, right?
Mm-hmm.
That my world is so busy, or I'm so distracted that I'm not connected, and that feeling like, shoot, I don't know where that went,
Mm-hmm.
and it's that connection that I crave anyway, so.
And in a sense, it's calling you.
It is.
You back.
It is
Mhm.
calling. It's so. It's not anything anybody else needs to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's what I need to do. What is my job? How can I reconnect? How can I move forward and hook back into that, that they call it the internet. I want to be in that
That's current.
ultranet,
Mm-hmm.
that current of I'm connected to spirit, and spirit is just like, hey, where have you been? You disconnected. It's like now we
Mm-hmm.
can converse. Now we can get along, right? That's what we all crave, right? We crave this connection. We crave that I'm seeing you and you see me, and we're having this conversation, and your words mean something to me, right?
Mm-hmm. Your presence,
Your,
yeah.
your energy.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
I really think that's what this is about. This time, this transition is about restoring that connection between you and the earth, you and your soul, your body, you and those around you that matter. This is that time. And we need to know that they're there.
Mm-hmm.
And when we're absent from it and when we're disconnected, we feel alone and dying.
Yeah.
Does that make
Something. Yeah. Something will you mentioning the earth and the cycles of the garden. It's the same thing. It's like there is a current, and that's why whether you like it or like what you said about your cucumber plant, it's gonna go with the current. So if its time is to not
it's
be here
time. Let it
any
go.
longer, naturally you'll leave seeds, which is what we are from our ancestors. You leave seeds because it'll be back and in its own form at the time for cucumbers or for Chrissy Better to shine or for Elena to shine. And that is on the shoulders of our ancestors. We are running this current with them.
And we don't, and the thing about Day of the Dead is so that we don't forget. We don't forget we're connected. They're like, we got this.
They're in the infinite. That's not.
They're not like, well, where are they? No, they're lit. It's like, where are they? Always present, like the sun, always shining, always giving their presence, always letting you know they're there, always. Even if the sun goes over the horizon, whether you think the earth is flat or not. Somebody brought that up recently. Uh, Even if the sun is over the horizon, and I run over to the edge of the horizon and I look over it, the sun is still shining. It does not stop shining. That's the essence of spirit. It's always give it, and the universe is giving this message. Now I remember too what you were saying about the calendar.
Mm.
So the calendar isn't just a way to keep time. It's basically our tool, like the fool's guide to get through time.
Yes.
It's a tool for us to help us prepare and watch and know what the next step is. That's why the Aztec calendar, I mean, it was essential. That having that calendar was a tool to guide us through the next transition period so we wouldn't come off guard like, what Christmas is here? What? It's like, no, we had time to move into that space. It is one of our most generous tools that we have. And nature is the other generous tool. That cucumber plant is, hey, stupid, get ready, because you're going to have to clean up now.
Well, that's who taught the languages, who taught time were the plants. The plants were here first, and the plants will remain, and the plants are the true timekeepers.
And I'm going to keep going back to relationship because it's so present in front of me right now. I really believe that why people get saddened or nervous or anxious during these times, like the holidays, what we're calling Christmas, Thanksgiving, is because we haven't made a good assessment during that summertime to uh, reevaluate who was I in that relationship. And this is a time to meet at the table and have your reevaluation and say, well, where are we? It's our checking in time. Because if we're not doing it during the evening on a daily basis, we got to do it sometime. And these calendars are also about that. It's about our personal relationships with ourselves and those around us. It's like, where do we stand? I actually believe, that if we can go into the winter and the fall and the winter together as a unit or as a group or as a family, however you hold your relationships, it's like you're going to make it through the tough stuff. So we need to be prepared for the Thanksgiving time or whatever you wanted to call it. We need to get rid of all the crap that was like do I need to hoard all these things? It's like, is this going to serve my family? Because when it's time for us to come together, am I making space for them? Or am I putting all my energy into things and not in each other?
Yes.
Right? So we have this opportunity to check in with ourselves and the people we love and reassess, how are we doing? Are we still on the same path? Is our mission compatible? I love Chrissy talked about missions. Do we stand on the same plane and are we moving forward together? Because we're going to need it in those darker times. Because we might have to stay indoors longer. We might have to squeeze in. And I'm telling you, we had this pandemic as proof that you either were going to reassess and reevaluate, or you were going to waste your time virtually traveling instead of, hey, we are forced to do this. Let's, we had a whole year of actually being able to practice reassessing, honestly.
And that would be because of the grander cycle. In the big cycle, since we're transitioning into literally a new day, that was definitely a very long night of darkness. It was very long because we're entering, again, to reiterate, a new day on a bigger scale.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I really believe that the ancestors had a cycle of going to the table and having these reassessments. It, like you said, the calendar allowed for a time where they would come together and, in their own cells first, having a ritual, which I think is a private thing that you do by yourself. And then you're able to like sweat all that crap out and go through your manyas in your head. And then you were able to go to the big ceremony where you can meet with your family members or the other people in your group and say, like, "Ooh, I just went through my own cleansing. Now I can tell you what's really on my mind."
Well, that's what, exactly, back to the calendar, that's what that is, because it's the knowing that that's why there's the different animals on the calendar as well, because it's the knowing that we began in one form and we move through these different forms. So our
Mm.
our beliefs were rooted in one God, many faces. That's what phases are, and transitions are the many phases.
Ah,
When we go into what Western society wanted to call like the water god or whatnot, it's actually transformative forces that are continuously changing Earth and our beings. So, of course, we recognize those things and we would observe them because we were in unison. The goal is to be in unison with the movement that it's like we see it in the body. If somebody isn't in unison with the movement, with the current in the body of the blood, right? And it's stagnant, and they don't see that they need to unblock these stagnant areas, then they become stuck, sick, right? So that's the movement in time is the same. If we get stuck somewhere, we'll begin to feel sick. We're carrying something that must be released.
and that happens because we didn't do the work of reassessing and over, imagine if we did that over years.
So it's usually being in tune, right? Because if you knew you had a fast, like almost every culture has certain phases of the seasons or moon where there's a fasting period. There's these are the ones that are still rooted in lunar calendars, like the Muslims and even the Hebrews.
Hindus,
Yes, it has.
even Chinese culture.
They're rooted in that because that's exactly what that was. The moon shows us the smaller phases that unite us with the grander cycles, and that's the reason why it needs to be recognized within itself.
True. The moon represents the small us,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so when we follow those phases, we are on a cycle and a practice, a daily practice of what our daily, uh, you know, our literally our daily path is.
Mm-hmm.
And it prepares us for, like you said, the bigger cycles, which is what I really feel like your ah there was a point to that. It just, oh, I know. So when you go through the bigger cycles, like you said, the changes of the animals,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're not supposed to fix everything overnight.
Right.
I can't fix all of me, all what I need to work on overnight. I can't fix, you know, all my fears, all my desires, all my expectations, all my past transgressions, all my future. What I can't fix any of those overnight. But if I have a calendar to help me, I can at least focus on one for 30 days or 60 days or
24 hours.
24 hours, just one. And where that's the tool, and that's the gift of this tool, is that it allows us this time. It's gentle, it's a gift, and we haven't taken advantage of it. And that's why we find ourselves in this pressure cooker of what's going to happen next. Are we going to explode into, all out war within myself and just beat up on myself, or with my partner, or with my friends, or with the world, or with society, or the universe? That's what happens when we don't go through these cycles. And I love that each phase of our ancient calendar is like, dude, just focus on this, because the energy right now is going to help you with that
for the next one.
And if we're all on the same page, we're all working on it at the same time. It's like, do you know what happens when the mindset is all at the same time? Boom! That's how that wall in Berlin fell, because all of a sudden it was one mind at one point that said, this can be no longer. That's how big things happen, and we're right on the verge of that. We're leaving an old way of being right now globally, and we're on the verge of something big and new, and it's unknown, so we think it's scary and undoable, but we have no idea. This could be, if we are all on the same page doing our work, this could be freaking right what we need.
And it usually happens, it's happening on its own whether we like it or not.
So you better be ready.
That's why acceptance is key, because it happens regardless, and it's beautiful how each story is embedded in every minute of the day. So, the number 24 is associated with Saturn, and Saturn is the reaper. It is transformation. It's what brings the dead. That's one day, in one day. And we see that it also preserves what's already been built. On a grander scale, we're at this place where what's been preserved and isn't working is being challenged by the new forces. And the reason I bring this up is because you mentioned, are we going to fight ourselves, or that what's external? And that's a lot what has to do with the warrior, with Mars, which present. These planets are actually like facing off in a sense. But the face off isn't really like, well, who's going to win? I'm going to tell you who's going to win, the new, because that's just the transition. And those who feel embedded in what they've already built, sometimes we cling on to what that is, and we're like, no, don't leave, or I put so much into this, without that realization and that acceptance, that although you've put into this, you're still gonna get the work you put in. Believe me, Saturn guarantees you that you're gonna get the harvest of the work you put in.
Absolutely.
But can you accept that it may not look like what you envisioned? And because it has to fit everyone in.
Everybody needs to be able to move forward, and that's the point. I'm going to dumb it down to what you just said. This
simplify.
Yeah, simplify. That's a better word. This goes back to the transition. Remember, we're in a great transition. So this goes back to the people who were invested in the earth is flat. The earth is flat. I've invested it. My prayers are about it. God is about it. The earth is flat. This is like our relationships. This is nice. We do this, we do this, we do this. I'm invested in this. This is what makes me comfortable. And I don't want it. All of a sudden, we get information like, ooh, guess what? The earth is not flat, it's round. And you're like, wow. Yeah, you're going to go through it. You're going to go through it. And like Chrissy says, whether you like it or not, you can have an easy transition and say, great, I was waiting for something new to happen, because, I was tired of the earth is flat. It was okay, but, I feel like restricted, and I needed to move my arms, and I want to know what's beyond just the earth is flat. I don't want to just sit at home and watch TV and, eat pizza every Friday night. I want to know who else. Hey, can we go for a ride too and have a conversation about what we're going to do next? Or can we expand a little bit more and say, wow, what is it like when the earth is round and I'm not the center of the universe and we're connected to bigger things and the cycles affect us? And could we prepare for that? Like, are we bigger than just our living rooms and televisions? Or nobody does television anymore. Our, our laptops and our YouTube and whatever. Are we bigger than that? Because the world is changing. We're not only round, we're expanding. The universe is expanding, and our consciousness and our bodies, we're feeling the restlessness of the expansion, and we're no longer comfortable, and we don't know why. And
I think one of the easiest places to be at when we're facing change that's helped me is the I'm wise enough to know I know nothing. Because that means that whatever next change comes, I'm gonna be like, oh well, it probably is gonna keep changing because not only is the world maybe or not flat or round, then the world really changes shape continuously. The world has been seen as a tree, as an egg, as multidimensional.
as a
So at the end of the day, yeah. So at the end of the day, if I don't hold on to any of it and know that I know nothing, nothing's gonna surprise me when it changes right before my eyes. That's I think the biggest lesson that I've been taught by life, and that allows me to have a new experience within each day.
Yeah.
Because if not, then I'm looking for the familiar and the comfortable. And in my case, that'll drive me crazy because I need a constant stimulation of of life. And just that one belief though carries me through each day that way. That I don't know what's gonna happen next, but I do know that I'm a part of this creation,
Yeah.
and that I was built to endure the journey because I didn't come in with this body that can't take the atmosphere or whatnot. I'm built for this journey. In that faith in that, I could I could endure any wave or submergence that I might experience.
And the proof is that we're here. Our ancestors were built for their challenges and they kept themselves alive, and we're here. And so we are proof that we can get through the most difficult times. We're proof that even unconsciously, we're going to get through it. There are those of us who will have a difficult transition. It does. This is where you said, but the new is for all, and our job in and we can help each other. That's what we're doing now. We're doing these talks because we don't want you to go through these transitions alone or that you're unsupported. We want to reach out to you and just say, come on, I'm going to take your hand for this little bit, and we're going to work. When I'm not right in my head, I go to my sounding board and I'm like, look, this is going on in my head. I'm feeling this and that. Can you just give me some feedback? Because this goes back to our first conversation that we had 3 Sundays ago, right? Is that we need each other to help us with the blind spots behind our eyes.
So that goes into relationships, right? That we're talking about. This is the time where relationships are highlighted. And being that they're highlighted.
And cosmically too?
Yeah. So that means that if you're thinking about what you need to hold on to and change so you can move forward, well, then on a little bit of a macrocosmic level, now your relationships are now on the table too. What needs to be changed and maybe even fine tuned in order to move forward. Relationships are paramount because they're actually our reflections, right? They're direct reflections of ourselves. And yes, this is the time that if you notice that there's just harmony or disharmony between those around you, don't feel overwhelmed because in truth, the energy is actually perfect to fine tune them. That's why that's why it's in your awareness. It's in your awareness because it's like, well, this is the time. Let's do this.
Mm.
Like,
It's a
you'll be
natural,
supported.
it's a natural space to fall into.
Yeah.
And you know, I really feel it. I feel it this, maybe that's why I'm feeling it, because I'm so connected to the earth that, you know, reassessing my garden, what's next, what should I keep, what should I continue doing the same, what should I let go of. It's like, it feels so right. Why wouldn't I use that in my own relationships?
It happens. I mean, one of the clients who's retiring
Yes.
was saying that just her cleaning her workspace to take home was taking her down that path.
Right.
Like, the stapler was 4 years ago, but it took her to that experience and to the people that
Right.
it was connected to.
And who am I going to stay connected to when I
Mhm.
retire? Are these still going to be my friends? And I'm going to still go out on Fridays and get drunk, or, you know, not that.
Yeah, not her.
No, no, not her. But it's like,
Oh, yeah.
or am I going to make different choices now that I'm transitioning into this new life? That's every person goes through it individually, and every relationship goes through it, or they get stagnant and stuck and toxic, right?
Mm-hmm. And then eventually sick.
And eventually sick. And not that, and I actually come from the belief that anything can be healed. Anything can be healed.
And that's the reason why. Because if you
Right?
clear the canals for the water to flow.
Right. If you clean out the trash, the water can flow, or you clean out the weeds, the garden can grow. If you clean out your own shortcomings or limitations, the relationship can find something new. If you clean out your body, your blood will make you stronger, younger, more vibrant, less prone to illness. It's like they're all connected.
Yeah.
They're all connected.
Yeah, we truly are the microcosm of the macrocosm.
Right. So think about this transition again. You know, I mean, I really am clear within myself that many things are going to change. Social, the way we socially gather, the society in general is going to change. Money is changing, and if you're not part of this change, you're going to feel you're not going to get that it's changing. The way that we look at money is going to be drastically changed, and the signs are there. The signs are there. So, oops. I just want you to know that if you're not ready, you're going to be really disappointed and thrown off course. And so, all of this to say is like, the change is coming. Are we going to be ready? Are we going to be as resilient as our ancestors, and not in a sickly state? Are we going to be confident and clear?
I do want to just mention one of my favorite sayings or dichos that is ancestral, that helps me not only through life but through these times, is that through transitions, is that from the moment we're born, our relationship to death is then born as well, right? So we're in constant relationship to it. So that's not only to the bodies that decay and the spirits that leave the body, but it's also with all these little deaths we're talking about within our own lives, our own self. When you're brought up that way, there's a confidence, and I've seen it with my daughters because they've been blessed enough to have elders within their upbringing, their schooling, and their spirituality. And I know when my grandmother passed away, so let alone to when their father passed away, I asked my youngest daughter, who was very young, she's still in elementary, and I asked her, how do you feel? You know, are you sad? Or she was like, no. She's like, because she's like, Nana Farias told us once that our life is about our journey to the sun, which is what I was talking about, tonal consciousness. And she's like, and it just means that Grandma Cello made her way to the sun already. It was cut and dry, easy for her to accept because it's just the cycle of life, and she doesn't feel it's done.
Right.
She just feels that she reached the place she's been headed anyways.
I love that. There was time to practice over a period of time to get understood. I like what you said about the little deaths.
Mm-hmm.
We get these moments of little deaths to practice these transitions. And she was just like, I got this, mom.
Yeah.
I've been witnessing and hearing and following, and you talked about the earth and the, our menstrual cycle. It's like, I get it. We're having little deaths along the way, and it makes me more confident and stronger to face the bigger deaths.
And that just, if when we walk with that, then we face them, like you said, in our smaller cycles, and we're ready for the bigger cycles. We had agreed that in these last 10 minutes, I believe, we'll take questions. If you have any questions, please type them in, whether you're on the Instagram live or on Zoom, and we'll be happy to answer anything.
Okay, questions. And would we be able to hear them?
If they raise their hand in Zoom, if you're on your phone, the icon is visible. But if you're not on your phone, you have to go to participants on your laptop, and you'll see a small icon that says hand raised. That's when you could enter the camera and speak with us. If you want to type it in the chat, that's fine as well. And of course, on live, there's also an option for questions where you could enter our visual, or you could type it as well. So, are there any questions out there? If not, we're gonna keep talking until our time runs out.
Yeah. I really want to go back to the practice of allowing yourself to go inside and sit with yourself. Take time to do your reassessments. Take time to um, do your personal rituals that help you get face each of your transitions. Oh, we do have a question.
Yeah, it's an addition to this. It's Marta Gonzalez says, in mythology, this is the season where Demeter, the mother goddess, lets her daughter go to the underworld. I wanted to ask to say a bit more about the relationship to shadow. So yeah, so it's akin to also Venus's journey, and we are
Nice.
Venus rules Libra, so we are in this season. Venus is the goddess, so like even in our cosmology, it would be the daughter of Calhuique. I might have pronounced that wrong. It wouldn't be her, Mother Earth herself. And that's because that's exactly what happens. So the young maiden, right, in all your awakeness and beauty and sensuality, and men and women have this, you put yourself out there. You're in a sense calling the procreating energies to you, so you can be with child. Being with child is actually where we're at right now. You're about to birth the new you. That is the journey into the underworld. I believe that's why a lot of women, when they're pregnant, they haven't done certain work of cleaning out the dream body. They experience like, oh, my pregnancy was this or that, heavier feelings, and it's because you are more present and you are amongst spirit. So yes, you're being prepared in the underworld to give birth. Giving birth is spring when you give birth to the sun, literally. And that is a creative experience within us. Yeah, some people create something external, but the true creation is yourself. So you're with child, with your own visions, dreams, and manifestation of life on this earth.
Yeah. And you're doing that journey yourself. You're that going inside or doing the shadow work is going to do your personal journey. It's like taking a vision quest, or it's like cutting, saying that I'm going to spend some time to myself, or I'm going to I mean, just the whole thing of taking time for yourself. We are better people when we do that, when we do the work of going inside and looking at who you are. And like I said, you don't have to clean everything out of the house. You just have to be willing to look at one thing. What is the one thing I can look at?
And when you don't know what that is, there are people like people like us who do that work where it if you weren't brought up or taught how to what looking within is, what it looks like, or how you may assess what is the next change to take, there's people who can help guide you
Yeah.
through this.
Which goes back to, even though you have to do that work alone, you don't have to be alone in the process. And I'm going to say every great
And that goes to
person,
the ancestors
that goes back to
too,
the
that you
ancestors.
have that with you.
Yeah. Every great uh, teacher has never just gone it alone. There's always been some guides, whether it's been, you know,
Actually, I heard that this morning my teacher was talking about Saturn
huh,
and was saying how hilarious it is when we get in that place where we're like, nah, why is it always happening to me? Life is, just out for me. I have this cloud over my head. And he's like, really? Like the arrogance, like the water's up here and laughing like, oh, you didn't just drink me this morning?
mhm.
The earth is like, oh, you didn't just eat from me this morning? But you're alone, right? And it's just a funny thing. I mean, we see it with our kids. I know some of my daughters are like, I just don't ever get what and we could be those children.
We are. We can. And it's okay to be that child. Sometimes we're going to go back to 5 years old where we didn't there might have been a trauma in our lives, and we're going to revert to the 5 year old who's like, I'm all alone and I just need to know that I'm not alone. And we're going to need some, but that's why we need our partners or our companions or our friends or our family to say, hey, 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 it's okay. I love you. I love you. You're not alone. I know you're going through this. I don't know what it is, but I'm right there for you. Like, I'm sorry. I'm sorry you're not feeling okay.
Yes.
We need that too. And what does it? It takes nothing away from me to give that to you, even though you're an adult and like you don't got this yet.
Yeah.
Why do I have to be responsible for you? It's like I lose nothing by saying, hey, 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 okay, okay. Is there anything I could do for you? How about I just sit here with you? We need that too. So that when she goes into her alone time, she's like, okay, I know I'm feeling alone, but she's got me over there. Or somebody else has got me over there. We need that too.
Yeah, even if it's not directly in front of you. I know I was going through it earlier this week. It was literally during work. So when you're at work, you don't really you're doing things, so you don't have the time to just be like, let me sit and just feel everything like that. So that's what was making it feel a little more erratic. The sensations and we're feeling a little more erratic, like,
Right.
I just need to release this. That's what I was feeling like. I just need something to
Right.
shoot out this energy. As soon as work was finished, I got onto Instagram, and one of my teachers was on there, and the first thing he said, and it just centered me, was he's like, I always tell you, I'm here, like I got you, like I'm here, I'm holding space. This is once I heard that, everything else that came was just it just flowed through me, and I was able to find my answer. I was like, oh, yeah, because I was feeling a little alone in the sense of like, where am I gonna direct this, or where's the support so that I can find answers. But I just needed the reminder. Within that, the rest of the experience was personal and my own. But I do want to share though that the experience did have to do with someone who's passed. So meaning that the what was unfinished in that relationship, just in case people feel that around this time, especially those of us who acknowledge the dead, because you have to understand that once you acknowledge something, you will get communication. So people are like, why do I feel this? Why do I feel their presence? Well, we're already like opening the door and inviting in, so be ready for them. And it did have to do with someone who had passed, and it was still a conversation of like forgiveness and acceptance, and even like an acknowledgement of like, I enjoyed the experience with you regardless of the bumps on the road. And now I'm ready for what's to come, and I know you're with me, like not only that you got my back, but you got my front and my back, because you're now infinite and you're now the part of me. So I just wanted to share
I really appreciate that. I mean, I appreciate that. One, you allowed yourself to be vulnerable. Two, that you didn't make yourself wrong because you were feeling erratic.
Yeah.
And three, that you accepted the generosity of your teacher, and you made it real, even though he's in some other country. You took his words and you allowed it to 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 be a part of your process with confidence that, I truly believe that he's got me. And if he's got me, then maybe I can dive into this uncertain place. And when you were able to go in there, I love when the space is safe enough where you can express yourself, so that whatever comes out, it just gets to, like you said, flow out. Remember the last time I said, like, you got to throw up all the crap. And if somebody can hold that space for you, it's like the gem, the little golden gem at the other end can show up, and then you can really see what it is that you needed. And it was, your message. Like, even though we had this rough road, like, I appreciated it.
Yeah.
You know, um, but we need to be able to use those tools.
Yeah.
And not get stuck that, um, you know, that.
And I can stick that it's not real or that it's not happening inside us, because once you just acknowledge the feelings that start pouring out, it leads you to that next awareness that is new for you to walk this new day. And sometimes we judge ourselves because we want to cry in the middle of work or in the middle of my kid having this exciting moment, but I can't hold back that my heart wants to burst at the moment. Or, that's why I'm sure you brought up judgment, like not to judge that these feelings are present in an inconvenient space or time. Some people, just that it's present in their life becomes like, this is very inconvenient. I don't want to be taken here. So when we just embrace it, it's actually a passing moment versus now I have this luggage that I lug around.
Right. And I think that's the point. The point is you being, you, I'm thinking about you and me. Like, if I have something to say, you being strong enough to allow me to dump this out, so that um, I can get what I needed out, and you're just holding space, and I get to find my confidence again.
Actually, it's a great thing you bring up because we're involved in a day-to-day dynamic.
Yeah.
Where we live in the same place, we work together, and that's a great point that we set that environment and tone. Because I have to say, I have not really found where we're both in the dumps.
No.
It's either if she's in a high point, like she's in a strong and built up in the point to help me in my low point. Then when I'm there, I don't think we've hit that place where we're both just
like, oh, now
can
what?
help. Yeah.
Oh boy.
And that's important to know within homes and relationships, that when you offer each other that strength, then you do become this unit, and you do form like Voltron, and you're not just this individual.
Oh, that was the point, was that when we're not always going to be like this, sometimes one is going to be here, and we can actually turn around and say, oh, I got you, come here, I'm going to help you, right?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty about this practice, is the practices, being doing your work so that you can be strong for the other person, and then I'm doing my work so that when you need me, I'm here for you. Like, I got you. It's like it continues to go back to, what is your daily practice? What are you doing for yourself so that you can be present in the moment and not feel like you're being attacked, or you're wrong, or you're judging, or you don't have it to hold for another person. I mean, what are we doing on our daily basis for ourselves so that we can be present for somebody else? What are we doing for ourselves so that we can be present for the community? What are we doing for ourselves so we can be present for the global transition? It all comes back to, what are you doing?
Yeah, I think that's a great place to end, because we are on our last minute, and Instagram don't play; they will cut us off. And if you're in the Zoom chat, well, this is just a great place to end, right?
Yeah, it's a great place to end. Thank you for coming.
Definitely. Definitely. And you'll see us again next week. And let's see what inspires us through the week. If there's anything, that you feel you really have had questions, please feel free to DM, direct message both of us.
Yes.
We'll be glad to take on certain subjects that maybe if we find that a lot of the community needs it,
Yeah.
it'd be nice
Yeah.
to embrace that as well.
Thank
So,
you. And thank you for being generous of your time to meet with us. And we can't wait to have more conversations. We
yes,
we thrive on this.
definitely.
Peace,
Wholeness.
wholeness.
All right.